What is a creepy fact about the human body? 1. The inside of your cheek and your rectum are lined by the same type of tissue. Go ahead. Feel. Cheek first, preferably also the vagina, that's why blowjobs feel so good. 2. If you wear a glass which vertically inverts your vision long enough, your brain will correct it and you'll see things normal. But when you take those glasses off, everything will look upside down again until brain recalibrates again. 3. The fact that the placebo effect even exists suggests that the brain does have some capacity to force the body to resolve diseases, and this has never been fully explained. Scientists are still exploring how this ability works and if it can be developed further. 4. Our brain filters out a lot of what we see along with just straight making shit up based on extrapolation. Proprioception always amazed me. That extrapolation allows your brain to estimate distances automatically and know the positioning of your arms and legs at all times. You can close your eyes and touch your nose with your finger without much thought involved. If a stroke knocks out that part of your brain, you have dysmetria, where you have a lot of difficulty subconsciously measuring distances. Proprioception as a whole is amazing, and trying to program a robot to even approach a rough draft of it is incredibly difficult and really hammers home just how complex our brains are. Also, the fact that some people just have flat-out better proprioception is something to take into account and may help you understand why some people struggle with some tasks. It's also part of why some people just suck at driving, since that is also heavily dictated by proprioception. 5. We don't just have one anal sphincter. When poo comes along, it passes another inner sphincter which isn't under voluntary control. Meaning you can do oh with your outer sphincter, but not the inner one. You tried. That's okay. Sensory cells can detect whether you're about to pass gas or solid. From toddler age on, you can decide to go or not to go. If the time isn't right, for example at a friend's house or no toilet nearby, the inner sphincter can push the poo back and store it there for later. That's why sometimes if you need to do a number 2 but don't go, the urge goes away after about 20 minutes later, but seriously, go if you can. Constipation risk. Gas can't be pushed back so easily, so we sometimes toot by accident when moving or engaging the core. Now what about liquid? It doesn't seem to know liquid, so we play Russian charlotte. 6. The front of your tongue is curious, constantly patrolling, and autonomous. It chases the dentist around your mouth and you aren't even aware of it. So embarrassing and weird creepy. In dental school, I learned this fact when practicing taking impressions on each other. My buddy's tongue kept licking my finger. I asked him to quit licking me, and he was like, I can't help it. And then we switched places and my tongue wouldn't leave him alone. And for those of you that don't think your tongue does this, some of you are right. But the majority of you just think your tongue is behaving, but it is all over the place without you even knowing. 7. When you get laser tattoo removal, the ink doesn't disappear. You pee it out. Your body's immune system breaks down the pigments of ink and it flows in your bloodstream. Gets processed through your kidneys. Then you pee out the ink. 8. Sometimes there are just random extra muscles. You can go your entire life without even knowing it. I've worked as a mortician and the Ms would tell me about some cases like this. Also, just random tumors, even when the individual had never been diagnosed. Lastly, skin sounds like saran wrap when peeled from the body. 9. My favorite is the blind spot at the center of each eye, where the optic nerve is. A lot of people don't even know it exists, and even if they do, it is bigger than people often think. And it's also really easy to demonstrate to people if you know how. It's one of my favorite bar tricks. All you need is a pen and a napkin to draw a cross and a dot. 10. The liver can grow parts of itself back. If you get a splinter or foreign object stuck in your skin, you can hold a flashlight against your skin and shine the light through your flesh, and the foreign object will be a dark spot. Light actually passes through our flesh quite well. Also, if you shine a bright enough light into your mouth, you can see the light in your own eyes. So what you're telling me is I can become a jack-o'-lantern. Shove a big enough light inside and bingo bango. Use lube. I remember watching a documentary or clip about some soldiers that witnessed an atomic bomb test. They recalled that they were told to crouch and cover their eyes with their hands. The light from the explosion was so bright, they could see the silhouettes of the bones in their hands. 11. We ate our own hair while inside the womb. Babies eat the lanugo, called as the fetus hair, that they shed while in the womb, and it builds up within them to form the substance that makes up their first poop, known as meconium. 12. A pregnant female corpse will build up enough gas to expel the fetus even after death. Look up coffin birth. 13. Your intestines know what shape they're supposed to be in and can move themselves, which means gut surgeons can just stuff them back into you when they're done and they'll sort themselves out. I have had my intestine resected, piece cut out, sewn back together, and now I am picturing the surgeon just shoving my guts back into me like a sleeping bag in a stuffed sack when the job was done. 14. Your brain makes shit up constantly. Like with vision, you have blind spots throughout your vision that your brain just fills in with things, through repetition and familiar spaces and things, etc., that it's predicting is normal. Your brain, on a very frequent basis, is just winging it when it comes to what you're actually seeing. 15. The brain will always usually try to ensure its survival, if knocking you out does so. Then you will faint for the safety of the brain. I remember finding this once, but I don't remember clearly. Your brain does a slightly similar thing with sleep exhaustion too. When it gets to such a severe point that things start breaking down, the brain will basically say not on my watch and put you into a microsleep. We've probably all had microsleeps before when we're overly tired, but the further you slip into sleep deprivation, the more dramatic they get. Your brain will trigger them more and more out of necessity, and you'll find it harder and harder to get out of them. When my sleep disorder was at its worst, I would find myself completely unable to open my eyes after my eyelids were dragged shut by sleepiness. The more I forced them open, the further I went into hypnagogic hallucinations. There'd be pink animals floating across the lecture hall. Sounds would become distant echoes, and everything would rapidly become a rainbow swirl of tunnel vision. My next recollection would be that time had jumped 3 minutes, as I'd fallen unconscious on my desk. After each microsleep, the next would be harder to snap out of, because my brain needed, to wrestle me down and hold me there. On bad days like that, I'd be unable to stop walking in the street because standing still would trigger microsleeps, and I'd collapsed once or twice before. Same goes for the bus. Absolutely no sitting, because I'd wake up at the terminal stop. I'd essentially had between 5 and 10 actual restful sleeps out of the whole 365 days. The other days could be a combination of 1 to 4 hours of effective sleep. Thankfully, my disorder is now about 75% treated. When I was in the military, if I stopped moving, I would instantly start dreaming with or without my eyes open. One time I was so sleep deprived that I was both awake and asleep. Dreamed that I turned around, and a flight crew was fully ignoring me and my friend as they had somehow gotten well into the process of launching a helicopter just a few feet from us without making a noise. I grabbed my friend and started dragging him to safety as he resisted me with every ounce of his strength, and then he transformed into a zombie and started snapping at me, and I was getting ready to throw him to his death when I snapped out of it. His first words were, "What are you doing? What are you talking about?" So he heard me as I shouted that we were going to get chopped to pieces, and when I screamed at him to stop making weird faces, or I swear to God he's going over the side. Another time I dreamed I was caught sleeping and was getting yelled at by my chief who planned on writing me up for an NJP. I turned away from him for a moment and looked back, and he was gone, nothing around except for near pitch blackness. I could see the pores on his nose. He looked and acted 100% authentic. It's worth mentioning that at this very moment someone somewhere is at the helm of a US warship in a state. They don't have to be. There is an autopilot, but then they'd miss out on valuable practice. 16. It is believed that mitochondria were once separate living beings that were engulfed by another cell, but didn't die. Instead, they provided benefit to the engulfing cell. They are a separate being. Today, the human DNA has over 3 billion base pairs, while mitochondria only have about 16,000. You're a composite creature made up of at least 2 species. 17. People keep saying your brain in these comments. I think one of the creepiest things is that you're the brain and the brain is you. But for some reason we brains really don't like to acknowledge this. The brain contains so much information about itself, or some of our bodily needs, that it decides to keep from us, well, itself. In response, the brain can undergo analysis to theorize how itself works. In other words, the brain might very well know how itself works. It just keeps that information from itself. But it has the curiosity to not only ask how itself works, but for some people a drive to discover how it all functions. 18. Allegedly, your immune system has no clue your eyes exist. Effective tomorrow. If your immune system found out about your eyes, it would treat them as an external threat. Therefore, try and neutralize your eyeballs, leaving you blind. True. Eyes are so-called immune-privileged sites. Severe trauma to the eye could potentially expose the immune system to antigens of the eye. That's when things can go dark. 19. Phantom pain. When someone has their limb cut off, sometimes they can feel pain in the non-existing limb. That's because sensory nerves that rely information to the brain, although cut short, are still active. So sensation from that limb are still felt if those nerves got provoked. 20. The way your eyes are shaped causes your vision to be upside down, but your brain flips the image automatically. 21. Your tongue has incredible tactile capabilities. So much so, that if you look at any object, you can vividly imagine what it would feel like to lick it. Go ahead. Look at the wall, your shirt, your shoe. The tongue knows. 22. How limited our minds are. And that will never understand that being in my room when I'm vacuuming is a bad idea, but the knowledge exists. I'm sure there's a buttload of information about the universe staring right at us, but we'll never understand it because of our stupid human brains. 23. Maybe not creepy, but I think it's weird that some studies found that your body knows what you are going to decide to do before you actually decide to do it. So they found the muscles would get ready to do something, say press a certain button, before the person consciously decides to do it. Or your leg muscles will get ready before you make the decision to walk. So when we think we are making a certain choice, our body actually already knew what we are going to do. 24. Our minds can be tricked, and our minds can trick us. Some people sleep with their eyes open. Our memories are fallible. If you remember something from 10+ years ago, the events in your mind are likely changed. You might remember a couple things properly, but our memories are almost never 100% accurate. On top of that, we usually don't remember the unimportant stuff. Our dreams are a product of our subconscious, from any memory, especially recent ones.